Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network here on YouTube and, of course, Twitter and everywhere else. And, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. At Stillman and Co. on YouTube. We are presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Long time no talk. So I think I've been off the air or been off the web or whatever you want to call it. I think I've been off for about an hour and a half. And so now we're back. Maybe it was 2 hours. I don't know. We'll get from there. So we just heard the Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi press conference in which Chad Brinker got up there and said he wants to build you, talking about you people, you the fans. He wants to build you a team that you can be proud of. They talked about Mike McCoy, and apparently Mike McCoy as interim head coach will be making some changes. And apparently, I think they want you to be excited about that. I don't know if it will or if it won't, but that's, I guess, what they're looking for. And they talked about how they had to make the change because they weren't seeing growth in the team, and the lack of growth in this with Cam Ward was a big part of the decision. They were asked about whose decision it was. Of course, they always get asked about whose decision it was. That seems to be a very common Brinker Borgonzi thing, and they didn't really answer that. They said Amy was part of the conversation. They won't reveal what changes Mike McCoy will make. Boy, I'll tell you, Mike Borgonzi, he's got all the answers. He will not tell you when it comes to what they're going to do. He will not tell you what changes they're going to make because he knows, but he won't tell you because it's a secret. Boy, I tell you, got to love the Titans. Everything's a secret. They're so smart. Everything's a fucking secret with them. Let's see. Chad Brinker said the job will be attractive, but he wants you to know. Sorry about that. He wants you to know that we're more worried about Mike McCoy and the games we're getting to play right now. Bullshit. Give me a fucking break. In fact, I'm going to write that down on my takes list as I was keeping on the Stillman and Company cards. I was keeping a takes list as to kind of my takeaways, and we'll get right into them here in a second. But I was listening to him talk about, we want to do this for Mike McCoy. This is about Mike McCoy and the rest of this season. Yeah, sure. You're not even excited about Mike McCoy. Give me a freaking break. So, the best. Kaharski asked about where Amy was. In fact, go ahead. You do have to give credit where credit is due, even when it comes from Kaharski, who will never give credit to me. But I had to laugh my ass off at two separate questions. This one might have been my favorite. This came from PK.
Where is she right now?
Where? What do you mean?
Where's Amy Adams Strunk right now?
Yeah, she's at her home.
Why isn't she here?
I'm here representing her.
Can you guys?
Why isn't she here? And then Brinker I'm here representing her. Oh, okay. The best part is Paul knew the answer to that. You knew the answer to that. I knew the answer to that. We all knew the answer to that. The best part is Paul just wanted Brinker to say it. And he did. And I have to say, I am laughing my ass off. Let's see. Buck asked a great question. Why should fans have faith in Chad Brinker to get it right? Here's what Chad Brinker said.
Decisions at this point. Why should fans trust you to be able to get this right based on the plan, since the plan hasn't gone right now 3 different times?
Yeah, I've been entrusted to do this job, and that's all I can say is we're going to work to get this right. Both Mike and I come from places where we've won a lot of football games. We got a front office that I think between all of us, we got 9 Super Bowls. We've seen what winning football looks like, and we know what that looks like. So we're going to do everything we can to support the staff currently. Our players. It's still early in the season, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of football to play.
I love it. Hey, we and our staff, we got 9 Super Bowls. We know what good football is. They have already used that line. You used it when you hired Mike Borgonzi about how you have so many Super Bowls because Brian Callahan had a Super Bowl in Denver, and you talked about that. So, again, I love it. I love people who claim Super Bowls that they didn't win. Belichick does that better than anybody. He always claims his giant Super Bowls. You didn't win those, buddy. The ones that count for Bill Belichick are the ones you won as the head coach. And Chad Brinker hasn't won shit as assistant general manager or president of football operations with the Titans. And he needs somebody over there that has the balls to tell him that. And not in the nice way. In the Chad, you need to stop saying that stuff because you sound like a fucking moron when you talk like that. And talked about how he's always communicating with him and Amy. And I did have to love that they asked about the process to hire Callahan because Brinker was a part of that. And Brinker said it was a great process. Yeah, it was a great process. They probably should have just thrown that all on Rand for whatever I'm concerned with. So let me get to the number one take that I am going to throw out there. This was my biggest takeaway from the press conference. It wasn't that Amy wasn't there. You knew Amy wasn't going to be there. Amy's never there anymore. They hired Mike Borgonzi to be the general manager, and Amy didn't even bother to show up to the press conference. Amy wants to be as removed from the public eye as possible, but she also still wants to own her football team and make the decisions there. But my number one take is this. Chad Brinker knows he is next on Amy's chopping block. That is the number one takeaway that I had is Chad Brinker knows it. You saw 2 guys up there at 7:30 at night, and this is not late for most people in the NFL. Now, I don't know what hours the Titans keep. They may be lazier than everybody else, and they may go home at 5 o'clock, but most people in the NFL work from about 3 a.m. until about 11 o'clock at night. Now, they get off earlier on Fridays, and Tuesday is usually a day off where there aren't players around. But I just know when I worked with a former general manager that he kept the hours from 3 or 4 in the morning until about 11 p.m. at night. So 7:30 is generally not the time of day where guys would be tired or guys would be exhausted or anything like that. And there were 2 dudes that were sitting up there at the press conference because, once again, the Titans have decided they have to reinvent the wheel. They have to have 2 people do the job of 1 person, when in reality, they only really need 1 person to do that job. And every team they play only has 1 person do that job. And when they have 1 person do that job, they seem to do it better than the 2 people for the Titans do with their job. But the point I guess I'm trying to make is I saw a difference in just reaction to questions, a difference in overall composure and disposition in that press conference. I saw one guy who was nervous, who was sweating, who was stuttering, who was using a lot of transitional words, the ums out there, to kind of think about what it is that I want to say. And I saw another guy sitting right there who was just not giving a rat's ass about anything that was asked of him and really didn't care to be there. One guy was scared to death about what's next for him, and the other guy was over it. That was what I saw. Chad Brinker knows he's next. And Chad Brinker, if I said this a couple weeks ago, if I bought the team today, Chad Brinker, see ya, along with Brian Callahan. And I wouldn't want Mike Borgonzi to run the Titans, but I would let Mike Borgonzi run the Titans. Again, in this instance, the Titans do this thing that they think works. They think it's a way of not allowing me or not allowing Paul or not allowing people to give blame by saying, well, we're all in this together. We all made this decision together. We all talked about it. We're going to hire the coach together. Not he's going to hire the coach. I'm going to stay out of it. He's the person we've put in here. I got to tell you, when it comes to the Titans and it comes to how they're going to run this operation, Chad Brinker knows. They listen to the fans. And Chad Brinker knows the fans are coming for him next. I think Chad Brinker wanted to delay the decision on Brian Callahan as long as he possibly could, because he knew the second that Brian Callahan was shown the door, everybody's attention was going to be on him. And everybody's attention now is on him. And he knows it. Again, I don't know what it is that he did to convince Amy Adams Strunk that he should be running the football operation for the Tennessee Titans. He is not qualified for that position. He does not have the resume for that position. But somehow, some way, he swindled her. And because of that, he gets to be the king of football, and he gets all the power, and he hires a general manager to not be the general manager, but to be the guy that's working with him so that he can have the power, but there's also, again, this gray area of responsibility. And Titan fans aren't going to put up with that because they've already decided Chad Brinker is a part of the problem. So Brinker tried as hard as he could, in my opinion, to keep this from happening. And Amy decided enough was enough, and she fired Callahan. And then, of course, you'll never, ever, ever hear Amy talk about it or opine about it simply because, well, Amy doesn't want to. And Amy doesn't have to. And at some point, there's going to be some rubber that meets the road with this new stadium and these fans in this city. And I don't know when that's going to come. But there's going to be a moment where Amy Adams Strunk is going to either have to step up to the plate or she's going to have to get the fuck out and give it to somebody else. And I don't know when that push comes to shove moment comes. We all have bosses. But I think it will happen. That's my first take. Brinker knows he's next. And Brinker is talking about, we're here to support Mike McCoy, and there's still a lot of football season left because for some reason he thinks that's the right thing to say. He thinks that we're not all going to see right through it, but we know better than that. So that's the first thing. Chad Brinker knows he's on the chopping block. And I don't have a problem with that. If I own the team, I would fire him today with Callahan. Number two, Mike Borgonzi, and again, I'm not a body language expert. I saw somebody in the chat said, oh no, you could see that he was nervous with the way he was. I'm going to tell you, I saw one guy there, Brinker, who was very nervous, who was very trying to remember the pre-rehearsed talking points. I'm sure Brinker and Kate Guerra and Everett Gerlings were probably in a room, and they probably held up cue cards, and they probably practiced the lines like he was getting ready for the fourth grade opera. And he was trying to remember the lines that he had memorized. Oh, yeah, let's make sure to throw in the one about how many Super Bowls we've won. So he was trying, and he was nervous. And then there was Borgonzi, who was sitting there, who basically answered every question with a, you'll figure it out. You'll see. It's like, so tell us, what kind of changes is Mike McCoy going to make? Well, I'll let Mike talk about that tomorrow. Okay. And so when it came to Mike Borgonzi, I looked at him and I just saw I want to say disgust on his face, but he didn't really give a shit. Like, he was sitting up there like, I'm at this press conference because I have to be here, but fuck these people. And I think that that's because while Chad Brinker knows, hey, you're next, buddy. I think what Mike Borgonzi's thinking isn't the opposite of Brinker. It isn't, hey, Brinker's the one who's in trouble here, and once they can him, I'm in charge. Ha, 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 ha. I think he's sitting up there saying, why did I leave Kansas City for this place? When they were interviewing people for the job, I said, why would Mike Borgonzi take that job? He's the assistant general manager of the Chiefs. Every year, there's about 4 or 5 general manager jobs that come open. And for some reason, NFL teams have no interest in hiring anybody anymore to be GM who has already been GM somewhere else. NFL teams want the next great thinker. They apparently don't want people that have built championship caliber teams already and done it in the past. They want the next great one. They want Johnny Jr. in Jacksonville to go run the team. So Mike Borgonzi, I thought about it at the time. I kept saying, why would he take this job? And the Titans told everybody, including the NFL and me, that this was a real general manager job. But I knew better than that. But even the Titans, they can be very convincing sometimes. Even the Titans had kind of convinced me a little bit that Mike Borgonzi was going to have real autonomy to run the football team. And then I got to the Super Bowl. And I had somebody who had been in, who I guess is in the NFL, but had been in the NFL for a long time at the Super Bowl. And I said, why did they not? What's the deal with that job? And they told me, and the guy looked at me and goes, that's not a real GM job. Chad's running the show. I'm like, well, but they're telling everybody else that, hey, Borgonzi's really the general manager. And that person looked at me and was like, yeah, but when Chad's in charge of football, that is not real general manager job. And I'll never forget what Floyd told me when John Curry got fired as the athletic director at Tennessee. If you remember that story, he tried to hire Greg Schiano and the fans revolted. And then he tried to make a hire and he's going to hire Mike Leach, and then they fired him. And Floyd said, if I was the athletic director at Tennessee, he said, if I'm the athletic director at Tennessee and I want to hire Greg Schiano to be the coach, and the president comes to me after we've agreed to it and says, I'm not going to let you hire Greg Schiano, then I'm going to tell the president, then you need to fire me. Because I'm not going to do this if you don't let me be athletic director. So you better fire me. And so when it comes to this job Mike Borgonzi took, I can't imagine Floyd taking a job to be general manager where, again, he has to answer to somebody else on football-related issues and that person not be the owner. So here's what I think happened. And this is why I think Mike Borgonzi had that look up there as if he was totally over it. My guess is Mike Borgonzi was told, you're going to run the football team. Chad's technically going to be over you, but he's really there to support you. And you're going to run the football team, and we're going to make you GM, and we're going to give you a real GM salary, and it's one of 32 in the world, and you don't know if you'll ever get this opportunity again, so you should take it, and he took it. And now I think he's realized, I went to a complete and total shit show of an organization with horrendous management, with irrational ownership, and with this weird game of political, diabolical, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, just soap opera way of delegating responsibility. So Borgonzi was promised, hey man, I'm going to let you be the GM and we're going to pay you like a GM and you're going to be GM. That'll be your title, but it'll all work out. Okay. Gets there and they say, yeah, no. Bob Shoop told me, and I don't know if he'd be okay with me telling this, but that's okay. I love him. Bob Shoop told me when he got the job as Tennessee's defensive coordinator, Butch Jones hired him with the idea that you're going to run your defense here at Tennessee. And then when he got there, Butch Jones said, I'd like you to run my defense. And Bob Shoop looked at him like, well, wait a minute. Didn't you hire me to run my defense? Yeah, but I want you to run mine. Okay, I'll do the best I can. And that is what I think's happened to Mike Borgonzi. So I think Brinker was up there and he was very nervous because he knows he's next. And I think Borgonzi was up there and I think he was more relaxed, almost embarrassed that he had to be up there, almost just despondent because he's over this shit. Because he knows in his heart he shouldn't have taken this job. He knows he made a mistake. Dude, you were the assistant general manager for the Kansas City Chiefs, and you came to this crap hole organization where you don't even actually get to be the general manager, where the team is worried about the PR director and not the offensive coordinator, where the team doesn't want people live streaming press conferences because they want the money on their YouTube page from it. And yet, here you are, right now today, sitting up there thinking, and in 3 years or 2.5 years or maybe 2.5 weeks, when that owner hauls off and fires me, the way she fired the GM before me, the way she fired the coach today, the way she's probably going to fire Chad next, and then when it comes to me, I'll get taken out back, and just like every mafia movie you've seen, it's going to be one in the back of the head, and that'll be the end of my NFL career. And that's it. Because once you get fired as general manager, you don't get another job anymore. Again, J-Rob won 61% of his games, went to the playoffs, and never had a losing season. And he can't get a job. So I got to tell you, when it comes to Borgonzi, you people out there may think that he's going to be the saving grace. Look at that man's body language. He's already over it. And I think he's over it because he knows he can't fix it. He's working with morons and working for morons. And he knows that because he came from a place in Kansas City where they actually know how to run a football operation. And I hate to say it, but as a fan, it does not give me a lot of hope. Number 3. I've said this about the Titans for a while, and I find this to be very frustrating because, you know, everybody's in the entertainment business, right? The Titans it's entertainment. On Sunday, you want to be entertained. When you go to the game and you're buying tickets, you want to be entertained. When you are bragging about how good your team is or listening to talk radio or whatever it is, you want to be entertained. So it's all entertainment here. And when it comes to the Titans, one thing I absolutely hate, and I think Chad Brinker is the epitome of this, but the Titans will tell you whatever it is they want you to believe in that moment, even if there is absolutely no way that it is humanly possible or actually true. Last year, the Titans got up there and told us after the season was over that we're going to draft, develop, retain. And we are not going to be reactive anymore. We're going to be patient. And here they are 7 games into the year, they fired the coach, and not one of us is surprised by it. So when Chad Brinker's up there talking about Mike McCoy, hey, this is a big deal. We just hired somebody who hasn't been a head coach in the NFL since 2016, and we want to believe in him for the rest of the season. Mike McCoy. Don't ask me about who the head coach is going to be next year because we're just Mike McCoy. Chad, this fan base is not that stupid. This fan base knows this season is over. This fan base knows this coaching staff is gone. This fan base knows Mike McCoy's not going to be the coach. And this fan base knows that you don't have a clue. And so when you're telling me Mike McCoy, I get offended. This is what Rand used to do. When he'd say things like, we checked every box. And I'm like, You don't even have a right tackle. How did you check every box? Chad Brinker is telling you something that only a moron would think, would listen to the press conference and would say, you know what? Chad Brinker has decided right then and there, Chad Brinker has decided that we need to be focused on Mike McCoy. So instead of worrying about who the coach is going to be next year, instead of worrying about are they going to ruin this quarterback, instead of worrying about all the things that matter, now we're just going to worry about Mike McCoy, Mike McCoy, Mike McCoy. Give me a break. Couple other things I wanted to hit on, and then we'll get to your reaction. I did love the where's Amy? Amy's at home. Why isn't Amy here? Well, I speak for Amy. Again, Brinker's like half snake oil salesman, half White House press secretary. It's like, I speak for the president of the United States up here at the podium, even though I have no power to decide when we fire the coach or not. I love that it was a collaborative decision to fire Callahan. Fuck no, it wasn't. Amy picked up the phone and said, fire him. And Brinker immediately said, but Amy, I don't think that's a good idea because we're getting ready to play the Patriots and Brian has great intel on what to do. And she was like, I've seen enough. Fire him. And Brinker sat there and said, well, now I'm on the chopping block. I want to get to this. This was in Brinker's opening statement about why they had to make the move. And I just kind of got rid of all the fluff as far as the Callahan's a great guy kind of thing. Callahan is a great guy. He's not a great coach, and that's a problem. And we all know that. We all recognize it. May Brian Callahan's head coaching career rest in peace. Okay, now, this is what Chad Brinker said about what he wants you, the fan, to think about reality.
This is about right now is we're not seeing enough growth from this football team. We're 1-5, and we got to be better in this. And I want to acknowledge the fact that we're all frustrated. We understand that you, the fan, you're frustrated with everything that's going on. But we're doing everything we can. We will do everything we can to build a football program that you can be proud of.
Okay, you heard that right there. We are doing everything in our power to build a football program that you can be proud of. That sounds like something you say at an introductory press conference when you've hired a coach in a college town where it's like, and I'll tell you something right now, Turtle Nation. I want to hire a team that you guys will be proud to represent your school. Again, we know you're trying your best to build us a football team we can be proud of. That's your fucking job. The problem is you've been here for 3 years, Chad, and we have been very, very, very disappointed in our football team. Not proud. And no matter what he does, as far as public perception is concerned, Chad can't shake the Rand thing. Like, he's clearly shaking it from Amy, where Amy does not look at Chad Brinker as if he is Rand Carthon's assistant general manager. She looks at him as if he's the answer, or at least she did until she flips on him. But I'm going to tell you right now, there is absolutely no way, zero, that this fan base is going to think that Chad Brinker wasn't here when they took a guard with the 11th overall pick, or wasn't the president of football operations and part of the hiring committee that hired Brian Callahan. I mean, Brinker could say, we want to build you a team that you can be proud of. Well, that's your job. Chad Brinker was asked about Amy's involvement in the decision to fire Brian Callahan.
So was this Amy's decision, or did you guys make a recommendation as far as the change that you thought should be made?
There was a conversation with, obviously Amy's involved in every conversation that we have. So we had that conversation with Amy this morning. We made that decision collectively.
Okay, we made the decision collectively. Again, at what point does Chad Brinker actually have to tell the truth? That's the one question. When can you ask him a question and he say, Amy made the decision this morning. This is where we want to go. Or he can say, I made the suggestion to Amy, or Mike made the suggestion to me and I talked to Amy and we made the decision on Callahan? Why does it have to be, again, what you would expect them to say, which is we made it collectively and we probably know is not true? You got to help me out on some of this, guys. And I'm talking about Brinker's got to help me out on some of this. Like, you got to help me out. You're saying stuff that I know is going to drive me crazy and drive other people crazy. I love the one when, again, Buck asked him why fans should trust him. And he's like, well, we've won 9 Super Bowls on our staff. Okay. I mean, again, I was with a women's basketball team that went to the national title game in 2009. Does that mean that all of a sudden they should make me the head coach at Vandy? I don't think so. But that's just me. And then finally, good job on TD's part. This was TD when it came to, so who's going to pick the next coach of the Titans?
Not the interim, but the head coach, actually, not permanently, but going forward once the season's over.
Yeah, I think, like I said, Mike and I have been, a big part of all those conversations with Amy. I don't know if I'm understanding your question correctly, but
basically what I'm asking is it going to be your decision, Amy's decision? Whose decision is it going to be to hire the next head coach for
I got you. Yeah, we're all going to work on that together. But Mike and I will lead if you're asking, as far as the search is concerned, Mike and I will lead that search. But right now, what our focus is right now is pouring everything we can into Mike McCoy and giving him every opportunity from here on out, starting this week. We got the Patriots coming to town. We got to do everything we can to help him, to support him the way he needs to be supported so we can go out there and win a football game. So that's really what our focus is right now. There's going to be plenty of time to talk about the next steps. Mike McCoy is going to get every opportunity to prove. I mean, he's been a head coach in this league before, so we want to give him that opportunity.
Okay, so I hear that, and it's like, hey, so who's actually going to pick the coach? And either Brinker's a moron or Brinker was trying to buy time in order to think about what he was going to say. So who's actually going to pick the next coach? TD, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Who's going to pick the next coach? Yes, you do. You know what it means. You're the GM, and in most organizations, the GM picks the coach, and the GM picks the players. But you're the president of football operations, and you outrank the GM, so it would lead us to believe that you are going to pick the coach, which means he's not picking the coach. And if you don't pick the coach, and you don't pick the coach, which is often the case in the NFL, where the GM picks the guys in the 4th round, but the owner is the one who's like, I want that guy at quarterback, and I want that guy to be the coach. Then who's picking the coach? Oh, I don't exactly know what you mean. And then TD lays it out perfectly for him, like, no, I'm not letting you off the hook with this. So who's picking the coach? Oh, well, we have conversations every day. But Mike McCoy. We need to pay attention to Mike McCoy. We need to get excited for Mike McCoy. We need to go back Mike McCoy. Our focus needs to be Mike McCoy. Just a train wreck. Oh, my goodness. God, I bet Vrabel is just having a freaking ball with this. I got to tell you, I might pick the Titans to win on Sunday, and I may pick the Titans to win on Sunday simply because if there ever was a game for a Vrabel special after they went to Buffalo and won, it is to lose to the Titans. It would be so Vrabel. Vrabel gets too cocky and too arrogant, and the Vrabel special comes, and that's how you lose to Zach Wilson and the Jets. I'm not saying I'm going to pick the Titans, but I might. Because Vrabel is just probably going to laugh his ass off all week. And I do agree with what PK put out there and what I believe Buck put out there, that it's like, yeah, this team did this because Mike Vrabel is coming to town and they didn't want Vrabel to beat that ass, and they didn't want to give Mike Vrabel the satisfaction of enjoying the fact that they beat that ass. Jeff says on Twitter, I think it might be good if you look into the camera as you talk, take it or leave it. Well, I mean, I'm looking down at the screen because there's breaking news all the time. That's how I read the YouTube chat. Trust me, I've thought about it. I've thought about like buying a teleprompter so that it's me looking into the camera while I'm actually looking at the screen. And I'm like, do I really need that? Do I really need that for a live stream? Maybe. For whatever that's worth. But again, Vrabel must just be laughing his ass off. Okay, let's get to some of your reactions so far here on I thought about putting a little post-game live thing up in the corner because this feels like a post-game show. The post-game to the Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker press conference, where once again, Brinker was nervous as shit and Borgonzi didn't want to be there. That was the vibe I got from those two. Matt says, let's all be honest. There isn't a single answer they could have given you that would have changed half of y'all's opinions. Maybe, but I'll tell it to you like this. I'm really good friends with the athletic director at Louisville, Josh Hurd. You know, he was like an older brother to me when I was in college, and he was a graduate assistant, and now he's the AD. And I remember when he took the job as athletic director, and there was a lot of heat because the football program was bad and the basketball program was bad, and there were a lot of questions, and this guy was an unknown, and a lot of people were like, why should this guy be running the show? And he got up there and he held a press conference in which he was accountable, to the point, and honest. And that's the kind of guy he is. But he held that press conference, and I watched from afar. And I sat there and I remember texting him after saying, I am so proud of you. And seeing the reaction of people that were like, man, that guy's impressive. That guy's got a shot. And every time it comes to making a change, he hired a basketball coach that was the worst basketball coach in the history of college basketball, fired him, and still has people's respect. So I think there was a way to answer those questions in which I think they could have changed some of those people's opinions, which is to shoot the fans straight. The problem is Chad Brinker has not done that for 3 years and is not going to start all of a sudden today. I mean, he didn't get to the top by telling people what it is. He got to the top by pumping sunshine. Why would you stop now? Chill Mode says, I really don't like Chad Brinker. This is what Chad Brinker, I am convinced, was trying to avoid, which is, for the longest time, I think Chad Brinker was trying to keep the heat off of him. That with every game they lost, it was Callahan this, Callahan that, Callahan, Callahan, Callahan. I was getting frustrated by the amount of people that would tweet me when I would talk about how depressed I was as a Titans fan. With the amount of people who would be like, well, Jared, it's really not Cam's fault. It's really not Borgonzi's fault, the roster. It's the coach. He's terrible, the coach. Oh, my God, it's all the coaching. And I knew that the second they got rid of the coach, Brinker would become the next target because that's how it works in this league. GM gets blamed, coach gets blamed, quarterback gets blamed, and it's all a musical chairs game as far as who's popular. And then whoever does the next thing is the one who everybody looks at. So when they hire this next guru coach to come in here, the Titans will spend an entire winter and an entire spring just feeding you nothing but constant propaganda about how smart this new coach they hired was. And you're going to say, Joe Brady won a national title at LSU, and Joe Brady was lighting it up with the Buffalo Bills, and Joe Brady is the man. So when Cam gets out there next year and he's still not accurate, you'll put the blame on Cam. You won't put the blame on Joe Brady. That's just how this league works. And Chad Brinker knows that. And he knows the second Callahan's gone, I become the target. Because everybody right now likes Cam Ward. So they're never going to sit there and say maybe Cam isn't that good. And I will say maybe Cam isn't that good, but I also don't think Cam's at fault for why this team sucks so bad. And I think the bigger issue is why they took Cam instead of trading the pick, and that wasn't Cam's decision. And with Borgonzi, I think the thing Borgonzi gets a pass on is the fact that he comes from Kansas City. He has nothing to do with the Rand Carthon administration, and we don't really know what he even does. So how do you judge him? So what the fans have done is anything good that happens in the draft, they say Borgonzi did that, and anything bad, they just put on Brinker. And Brinker is aware enough to know that that's how the fans feel. Now, the real question is, will Amy start listening to the fans, or will Amy hold firm in her belief that Chad Brinker is the man and that she is thankful that she believes in Chad Brinker the way that she does? And I don't know. Amy listens to the fans. And so when you listen to the fans, you're going to make some irrational decisions. But that's that. Richard says Chad Brinker is the human definition of the deep state. I mean, I don't want to say that that's incorrect because I think there's something to that. But I don't think Brinker's the definition of the deep state. I think Brinker's accomplice in all of this is the definition of the deep state. And I'll let you do the math as to who you think I'm talking about. And it's not Mike Borgonzi. Wes says that press conference made us fans feel worse, not feel better. Again, there's a part of me that is sad that this is my team. And there's a part of me that feels completely helpless when it comes to hoping that they're going to get it right, because I know Amy just is not, for some reason, seeing clearly. And I don't know if that's because her son-in-law is pumping her full of bullshit or what. But there's something in this that just leads me to believe, even though Amy, with the help of Steve Underwood, got out of the mess 10 years ago, that Amy is incapable of allowing herself to get out of the mess now. And that all these people that work for her are just puppets who think, I can do it. And then they get there and it's like, actually, I can't do it. So that's why I'm kind of depressed. But there's also a part of me that feels kind of vindicated. Because I remember when I listened to that Chad Brinker podcast interview, when he was at the Senior Bowl, Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan didn't go to the Senior Bowl. Chad Brinker had gotten promoted to the president of football operations, and he sat down with the Titans radio crew with Mike Keith and Dave McGinnis and Rhett Bryan and Ramon Foster, and it was a total freaking blowjob fest with that sit-down interview they did, which is how most of the Titans in-house media operates, which is not unusual for NFL teams. But last offseason, not this previous offseason, but the one with Carthon, Brinker, and Callahan, that was over the top from both the team and the people working for the team. But I heard that podcast interview. It was the Saturday before I left for Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. I went on a long walk because it was a Saturday and I didn't have any kids and I didn't have a dog. And so it was just me. And I just wanted to go on a long walk on a very nice day. And I saw somebody that was a Titans Twitter Bobo who said, you need to listen to this Chad Brinker podcast interview because you know the Titans are headed in the right direction. And I don't know why I said, okay, I'll listen to this podcast interview to see if it's any good or not. But I listened to the podcast interview and I kept hearing, like, he'd be asked a question. So what is it that you now do as president of football operations? And it'd be like a 2-minute answer of nothing. And that's where we got the clip about the AI, that cured cancer. That's going to be the difference in the way that they build the roster, and about how he said all those great things about Rand Carthon. And he said, Rand's got an acronym FIT, fast, intelligent, tough. And I said, man, I really dig that. And I'm like, what? And I listened to that whole 2-hour interview or whatever it was as I went on that long walk. And I'm like, all of this is horse shit. And I even told the Titans, and they pushed back on it. They're like, no. You're just a hater, Jared. And so I feel vindicated by the fact that the same people who were telling me, you'll see with Rand Carthon, and you'll see with the Pee Wee program, and you'll see with Chad Brinker, you'll see Jared, are now having to eat their words and say, oh man, these guys actually do stink. I'll never get a, you were right, Jared. I'll never get that. And that's okay. But part of me is depressed because I don't see my football team getting any better. And part of me feels like, you know what? I try to tell you guys. It's like the coach. I tried to tell you when he didn't change his coaching staff and he told people the Pee Wee program was going to work, I knew this guy's porked. It's kind of like the quarterback. I knew he had bad mechanics, that he wasn't accurate. I knew that he wasn't an elite prospect like most number one picks at quarterback are, and I knew that the organization did not have an infrastructure in place to support his growth. But Jared, he's Mahomes. Go look at Mahomes and what they did with him in Kansas City. They sat him on the bench for a year. You didn't sit your guy on the bench. When they put him in there, he had Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. You don't have Tyreek Hill at wide receiver. They had Travis Kelce at tight end. You don't have Travis Kelce at tight end. They had the number one overall pick in the draft at left tackle. You don't have the number one overall pick in the draft. They had a team that the year before was a top 2 seed in the AFC when they drafted Mahomes. It's different. So you could say, hey, he's Mahomes, but they're not doing anything to Cam Ward that is similar to what Kansas City did to Mahomes. So how do you expect to get a different result? Browning says apparently they kicked Buck out of the facility as he was about to go live. Is that true? I mean, don't get into the YouTube chat and say, oh yeah, no, it's definitely true. I'm just going to go look. Okay. Buck said, about to go live from the Titans facility, getting a correction. The Titans said, no go. I am running home. So Buck has to run home because the Titans won't let him go live from the facility. Again, the Titans, they're all mad about live streams and YouTube and everything else. They're telling me I can't run the press conference. And that's fine. I get it. I mean, I understand. But to me, I'd say, do you really need the money for your YouTube feed? Again, it doesn't matter to me. I don't. Post-game live just won't have the coach's press conference. It won't have Cam Ward's press conference. That's fine. But, I mean, come on, give me a break. With the idea, which is good because I'm thinking I may go to the game on Sunday. So maybe I'll go to the game and then go live when I get home since I can't run the press conferences anyways. And then I can run the press conferences and discuss what they say or hear the press conferences and then discuss the really stupid stuff and leave out all the other stuff that, you know, may or may not be important. I'll probably still go live right after the game. They kicked Buck out of the facility. Well, here's the thing. Number one, Buck should have probably talked to them. Buck probably should have talked to them about wanting to go live before he did. The reason I didn't go to the press conference is because I knew I was going to come on right after that press conference was over. And I didn't think that logistically I could do both. But I do think it's kind of funny. I mean, Buck's on their team broadcast. He's on the pregame show. He's on the network pregame show. They put him and Jim Wyatt on there. Whew. Ryan says, do any other teams have this structure with the president of football operations and the general manager? To the best of my knowledge, and I do feel like I would know about this, no, they do not. And what's hilarious is when they did this, you remember it was when they announced they were hiring Brian Callahan to be the coach. And what they announced when they announced Callahan as the coach was a promotion for Brinker from assistant general manager to president of football operations, and a promotion for Rand Carthon from general manager to executive vice president / general manager. So they got promoted, Callahan got hired, and there was this huge gray area as to who was actually in charge of the football team. Now, Rand said that contractually he had final say on the roster. But then the Titans told me that Rand reported to Chad and Chad reported to Amy. And there was this whole argument about who was in charge. And I just said, look, I don't know of a single operation in which the president is outranked by the vice president. And people said, well, baseball teams have this structure. That was kind of what the Titans were saying at the time. Baseball teams and basketball teams have this structure. And I'm like, yes, but my friend is in the front office of the Orlando Magic, where the Orlando Magic have a president of basketball operations and they have a general manager. So that would be somewhat similar to the Titans, right? The difference is that the president of basketball operations, Jeff Weltman, runs the team. Anthony Parker is technically the general manager, but Anthony Parker, he don't run shit. Jeff Weltman runs the Orlando Magic. And in the baseball teams, where the president of baseball operations, that guy's really the general manager. And that's probably what's actually happening here. Hilarious, though. They kicked Buck out of the facility. Juan talks about Bill Callahan also being relieved of his duties, or I guess as Kaharski put it out there, he decided to resign. Let me say this. I don't know the semantics of this, and maybe this would have been a good question to ask. Who knows? I really hope, and with the Titans, you don't know if they're actually going to do this or not. I really hope that when Bill Callahan was told of his son's firing, and again, Kaharski reported that he resigned, I really hope that they're paying out Bill Callahan as if they fired him. I really hope it wasn't well, if you're going to fire my son, I'm going to resign. Okay, well, we're not going to pay you anymore because you're voluntarily leaving. And if the Titans did that, it wouldn't shock me because the Titans are a poorly run, cheap organization. But I hope that they did a little bit better there. So, again, I shrug it off with the Bill Callahan thing. The offensive line was a train wreck, and I think a lot of that was because Brian Callahan and maybe even Bill Callahan thought that their skills could overcome just how awful some of the players they were given were. Duncan, PT, Ojukwu, etc. And I think offensive line play in the NFL takes a while to gel. I actually think the Titans offensive line played pretty well a couple weeks ago. And I knew that J.C. Latham was going to have an issue coming back because he'd been off for so long and because he didn't even really play in the Denver game. And I knew that was going to be an issue, and it was. I think Bill Callahan's probably a pretty good line coach, maybe not a very good line evaluator. Because the one I didn't get from the beginning was Cushenberry. I wanted to sign Biotish, who's with Washington. And so I didn't get the Cushenberry thing. But it's like, well, Bill Callahan, he's bigger, and that's what Bill Callahan wants. And I'm like, okay. But bigger does not mean better. Although I will say that when it comes to the whole Bill Callahan thing, man, they signed a lot of bad players. Cushenberry's not very good. Sadiq Charles. I mean, they really... Dan Moore is exactly what I think we all thought he was going to be, but who knows? Just looking through more of your chat. I listened to the press conference, and boy, does Brinker sound clueless. I just think that Brinker probably needed to be more assertive. And I don't think he has that in him. Like, I don't think Chad Brinker can look at somebody in a press conference setting. He always looks nervous in these press conferences. And he can't get up there with confidence and say, hey, we made a change because this team's not good enough. That's why. And we love Brian, but at the end of the day, this team's not good enough. And I think another reason why Brinker seems clueless is because a lot of the questions are, you played a part of this, and what's your culpability? And he's sitting here saying, this guy fucked up and that guy fucked up and not me. Jesse says, Brinker is clueless and Borgonzi just looks useless up there. again, I saw two dudes that were up there at the podium. One guy, Chad Brinker, looked incredibly nervous. And I think he was incredibly nervous because he knows he's next. First it was Rand, then it was Brian, now it's him. There's nobody else to go next. And they're not going to put Borgonzi next when Borgonzi doesn't have the authority that Brinker has, and Borgonzi was hired by Brinker. And the other guy, Mike Borgonzi, was up there, and he looked like he couldn't care less to be there. And I think the reason why he couldn't care less is because he doesn't care what the fans think. He doesn't really care what the media thinks. And I don't even think he really cares what the owner thinks, because I think he regrets the decision to leave Kansas City and the assistant general manager position, where every year you're going to be competitive. Every year you're going to get interviewed for general manager jobs, and real general manager jobs where you actually get to pick the players and you actually get to pick the coach and you actually get to decide what direction the organization goes in, and not this where he's GM entitled, but he doesn't have the authority and the owner's a wild card and he regrets the decision to take the job. Because the way it works in the NFL at general manager in 2025 is you get one crack at it. And once you get fired, everybody will just assume that you're no good, and that's it. And so the one bullet that Mike Borgonzi had to get to be general manager, he took it, and now he regrets it because he knows he can't win. That's what I saw up there at the podium today. A president of football operations who's nervous and knows he's next, and a general manager who feels like he can't change anything, and even if he could, it wouldn't make a difference because this organization is so bad, and he hates that he took the job here. That's what I saw. Boy, the YouTube chat is just going off about whether or not Will Levis is going to be a reclamation project. I think Will Levis is too unaware and stupid to be a good quarterback in the NFL. That's just me. Caleb said, honestly thought Borgonzi looked clueless too. Every answer he said was, sometimes you just need change. Borgonzi has a lot of J-Rob in him. And one thing I hated about J-Rob when he was the general manager was he came from New England. And so he thought that every answer had to be like Belichick, where he just kind of had to mumble a couple of words and not say anything. And maybe he wasn't as skilled as Floyd when it came to bullshitting. But I didn't like the fact that it was like everything was a 3-word answer of, hey, what do you think about Will Levis? And it's, well, we've got to do the evaluation and go from there. It's like, maybe give a little bit more, or at least give the appearance that you're giving a little bit more. Floyd used to tell me the way he'd do that. And I heard Willie Donick a couple weeks ago talking about the fact that Floyd Reese would do an hour on the radio every Friday, in which Floyd told me he was compensated very well for. But he would take phone calls, and he never gave up too much, and I'm going to tell you why. Because he told me his strategy was, I'm going to answer whatever I want to say, whether it aligns with what you asked. And I'm either going to tell you something you already know, or I'm going to tell you a story that you don't know that really has nothing to do with what we're talking about now. And I remember because J-Rob went on our midday show at the time when Floyd and I were still working together, and he was asked about moves at the deadline, and he said something along the lines of, tells the story about how they made that Jack Conklin trade at the last moment. And I played the cut for Floyd because I'm like, this Jack Conklin draft trade has nothing to do with the trade deadline that's upcoming. And the old man laughed. I was like, ha ha, that's my guy. And I don't think Borgonzi knows how to bullshit like that. So that's why I feel like every answer was, well, sometimes you just got to change, because Borgonzi doesn't want to say anything about anything. And the problem is you can't really do that when you're losing, or else people are going to hate you. And Borgonzi doesn't have to worry about that right now, because Brinker's taking all the bullets. So I have a feeling this isn't actually John Gotti, though it'd be kind of crazy if it was. Borgonzi was 100% nervous, clearing throat, mouth grooming, lots of looking down. Isn't that also kind of the look of somebody who doesn't want to be there? There wasn't a lot of, there wasn't a lot of that from Borgonzi. I think Borgonzi was looking down because he was looking down thinking, God, I hate this fucking team. Why did I take this job? It's me hitting my head with the microphone, which is what Borgonzi probably wanted to do during that press conference. A lot of you in the YouTube chat are saying like the video for Stilly. I'd say this. Subscribe to the channel. Like, comment, do all of that. Andrew says, Jared, we don't always align, but you have spitting hot fire recently. Let me say this, Andrew. The reason why is because they're 1-6 or 1-5 or whatever their record is. When I told everybody this spring, I'm like, this is going to be a disaster. If you take this quarterback, it's going to be a disaster. It was, you're a hater, Jared, and you're just doing this for clicks. Well, they took the quarterback, and then they didn't do anything that I said, if you're going to take the quarterback, this is what you need to do. They didn't do any of that. They did what every stupid team does, and now they're getting their asses kicked every Sunday, and now it's like, Jared, lately you've been bringing fire. You've been telling the truth. No, I was doing that the whole time. You just didn't want to hear it. And now that they're getting their asses beat every week, you're like, man, Jared actually is making some sense. Okay, that makes some sense. Okay. Like, I love you saying, hey, our takes don't always align, but now they do. But I'm telling you, this is more about the situation than this is about how you feel about me. I remember it with the Predators. I remember when the Predators fans went from, I trust David Poile more than I trust you, to Jared, you are right. David Poile's got to go. He needs to retire, and John Hines stinks. Jaron says Brinker is up next if things don't improve. I think he's up next because he knows he's up next and there's no way out of it because he's not qualified to do this job and he's not good at it. Jeff says, I love Jared doing the post-game and reaction videos. I've always loved the content, but this is better than ever. I mean, I've been on the air today for 5 hours, which is exactly what it would have been if I was on the radio. But this is commercial-free for the most part, though I am going to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, and I'm going to do that because even though I have fulfilled my obligations for Hiller, I want you to know how much I love them. We'll do that in just a little bit. So I'm going through this. Zach says, has an owner ever sold a team from being so bad? I mean, yes, it has happened where it's like this person is so miserable that they're just like, fine, I'm out. But no, like the league cannot force an owner to sell a team because they stink. Jennifer says, how many more coaches will be allowed to fail before Brinker is the problem to Amy? So here's what I think is going to happen. And this may be why I think Brinker's like, Mike McCoy, Mike McCoy, Mike McCoy. Brinker knows he's next. Again, I've said a lot of things about Brinker. I have never said Brinker's stupid. And I'm not convinced that Brinker is stupid. But Brinker knows he's next. And I think he wants to see growth, as he kept talking about during the press conference, because he knows if under Mike McCoy, Mike McCoy, Mike McCoy, there is no growth, then Amy may turn on him and then turn it over to Borgonzi and let Borgonzi pick the next coach and fire Brinker. Which, if I was setting odds right now for what's going to happen at the end of the year, I'd say it's probably even money that she's going to fire Brinker and make Borgonzi the full-time general manager. So I don't think there's going to be too many more coaches that are going to fail around here before she pulls the plug. But Buffalo getting beat by Atlanta. Where's the boo-hoo Joe Brady crew? You guys are the ones that are telling me I have to hire him. And they're losing to Atlanta. I don't think that's a very good sign. One person said, Jared is like Tony Valenti in Detroit. He's going to hit you where it hurts. And it's true more times than not. I appreciate that. Valenti's a very talented dude. He's had good ratings in Detroit for a long, long time. Kevin says it's only because fans want to hope instead of looking at reality. I mean, I've been hopeful for the Titans too. I thought 2023, with Vrabel coaching them, with Tannehill and Henry coming back, I thought that they were going to win 11 games that year. But then I realized pretty quickly that ran stupid and that wasn't going to be possible the next year with Rand in charge. And then everyone told me that I was a racist. Because I guess that's just how it works sometimes. Francisco says if they fire Brinker, will Borgonzi just be the head guy going forward? I mean, let's not kid ourselves, Francisco. Who knows what Amy's going to do? Nobody knows what Amy's going to do. Nobody ever knows what Amy's going to do. But yeah, probably. Again, if I was setting odds, that's what I think's going to happen. Now, I've been wrong sometimes. If I bought the team, and I said this 2 weeks ago, if I bought the team, I would have fired both Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker and would have put Borgonzi in charge, even though I would not have hired Borgonzi if I had owned the team before Borgonzi was hired. So if I had bought the team at the end of last year, I would have cleaned house completely. And I would have brought in Thomas Dimitrov or Rick Spielman or Mark Dominic or one of those experienced general managers to run the show. Then I would have let that guy decide what to do with the coach. And most of the time, the new GM wants to come in and fire the coach. And I would have been okay with it. But now, because Borgonzi's here, if I bought the team, I guess I'd keep him. He's got a resume that says that he deserves a shot, a real shot at being a real general manager. So I'd give him that shot, but I'd do it reluctantly, I guess. One person says, this is the future. We are more worried about getting a Super Bowl than playing one. We're going to get a Super Bowl no matter what. When you build a stadium with a dome, or you build a stadium in a warm weather town, you're going to get a Super Bowl. My question is, are we going to get multiple Super Bowls? Because I think we'll be a good Super Bowl host city, but we're going to get a Super Bowl. That's already been decided. There's no questioning whether or not we are going to get a Super Bowl. We're going to get a Super Bowl. Okay, thank you to everybody for listening to today's program. Like and subscribe. And let me just tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Just hear me out on this. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, my guys, they take great care of my home. They've done that ever since I bought my first home in 2018. They've been in business since 1990. They're family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that's performed, they will make it right. They are professional, experienced, trustworthy, and they have great technicians who come into your home and they leave it cleaner and better than they found it. And I know that because I use Hiller and they put the little shoe covers on when they walk in the house, even if I tell them not to. They are proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, the Vanderbilt Commodores, and the Tennessee Volunteers. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay, I will be back, I believe. I will be back tomorrow for a special edition of a football show, though we're still figuring that out. And I will be on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow tomorrow. And right now, fingers crossed, might be on the Jim Rome show tomorrow. And of course, I will for sure be back at 2. But the one promise that I have made about this situation, my new digital show, is if something happens, I'll be on the air. If something goes down with the Titans, whether it's 9 o'clock at night or 9 in the morning, or we will be here. So hit that notify button. Hit that subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We want to get up over 3,000. We want to be way up more with subscribe. Hit that subscribe. And with that, we'll see you soon.